Hello? It's you again. Anyway, listen, it's me here. So welcome to another super selection of terrible tales. It's another Confessions podcast from your friends at Radio 2. Thank you for downloading us. Anyway, here comes another selection of people who would like to have your forgiveness if you can be bothered. This week's concise collection includes a sweet seahorse surprise, a terminating teenager tormenting teacher, a pirate parcel puzzle, and a nutty nana from Northampton versus a matriarch's missing monarch. It's all tied up together. Here it all comes. Tonight's confession, here we go then. This comes from, and it's signed, a lady called Dave. Now, I think that's quite specific, but as we get through, it's going to be so specific, everyone is going to know precisely.
Really?
Well, they're not. But if you know a lady called Dave, there aren't that many ladies called Dave anyway, are there?
No.
Well,
I don't know any.
And given the specialism that's implied in this, I think you're going to be able to spot if she's in your orbit. Anyway, thanks, lady called Dave. Dear Father Simon and the animal-loving collective of forgiveness. And as I said before, this is a slight, if you're having tea, you might just want to put it to one side, just for a moment.
Back in the oven.
Yeah. As a former zookeeper, always a promising opening line, one of my favourite opening lines ever, I probably have enough confessions to fill your show daily for years to come. Well, bring them all in, lady called Dave. We were a rowdy and joke-loving lot, and our downtime can be plentiful, often leading to naughtiness. However, this confession was not a practical joke gone wrong. This is a tale of laziness, lack of health and safety, and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Here's another great line, which I don't think I've ever had in a confession. I was breeding seahorses.
Of course. Yeah.
A real job, says lady called Dave, and a difficult one. Right, get those two together. They don't like each other. Doesn't matter. Make it happen.
Candlelit dinner.
It's the boys, isn't it? That'll have the babies as well.
Yeah.
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 Different times.
Yeah. What? All the time.
It's not different times in the seahorses world. It's always the same.
Oh, we made ourselves laugh.
No one else, just us. Anyway. A real job and a difficult one. The male, that's right, the male, exactly Bobby's point, can give birth to 1,500 baby seahorses, or fry, or seafoals, as they're known. How about that?
Seafoals.
Seafoals, or seahorses, or fry. And these little carbon copies are very difficult to keep alive. They need very clean water, and therefore require a lot of water changes. Now, the best way to change the water on a tank is to siphon water from it, using a siphon tube like a little vacuum cleaner, sucking all the debris off the bottom of the tank. What you must not do, Matt, if you find yourself, Bobby, if you ever find... No, absolutely. What you must not do is to use your mouth to get the siphon going. The water can carry, get this, zoonotic disease, and getting any water in your mouth can be dangerous and needs to be logged in the accident book.
Who would even think to do that?
We have to get it started.
Ridiculous.
Something got me started. Anyway, a lady called Dave continues, despite the interruptions. Now, Simon, the siphon was often somewhere else, and my seahorses needed cleaning. I didn't want my little babies in dirty water any longer. I used to siphon with my mouth before the big health and safety came along, and no one was about. I only needed to change a couple of inches of water. Who would know?
Okay.
I grabbed a tube, I sucked to the end, I dropped the tube into the bucket below, I hoovered the bottom, cleaning the debris successfully. Job's a good one. Then I removed the tube, but my pesky babies clearly hadn't finished their, shall we say, ablutions that morning, as a few pesky specks remained. So in the tube went again. I sucked. Simon, I have to tell you, seafoals are very, very tiny, and 4 of them whooshed up the tube. Now, I don't know whether it was the shock, but I didn't drop the tube into the bucket. I just removed the wet end of the siphon tube from the tank, and the fry were now on a reverse water slide into my mouth! It was at this moment that the head of the section arrived with some behind-the-scenes tourists who couldn't have timed it better. I dropped the incriminating tube and kicked it under the tank, And this is Dave. Yes, a lady called Dave. She's looking after our seahorses programme. I nod, the 4 seahorses still in my mouth. I had so much water in there, I must have looked like a hamster. These, says my boss, these are the new fry that we've bred. We have a lot, don't we? I responded, being hamster-like. My boss cocked his head. I was usually very chatty. It was very unlike me. I was starting to feel a little ill. The water didn't taste good, and the seahorses were definitely swimming around in there.
Oh, no, they won't.
And the thought of it was not great. This was the worst mouthwash I'd ever had. I offered no information or conversation because I couldn't, and my boss shuffled off his paying guests. I ran back to the tank and slowly opened my mouth over the surface, releasing 4 very confused seahorse fry. I don't think they were confused. I don't think they had the first idea what was going on. They went, oh, it's light. Oh, no, it's dark. Oh, it's light again. Never mind. Father Simon, I don't seek forgiveness from the seahorses. They appeared fine. Nor do I seek forgiveness from my boss. He never found out, and it was the quietest I had ever been. But I do seek forgiveness from the paying guests. They were greeted by a rude, puffy-cheeked hamster woman who gave them no backstage tidbits, and she did look rather green. Please have mercy. A lady called Dave. Now, the reason why I think if lady called Dave is in your orbit, there aren't many ladies called Dave who are into seahorses. I would imagine. I'm just guessing. Anyway, very good to have zookeeper confessions. I don't think we've had a seahorse confession before. Maybe we had one before. Anyway, Sister Bobby, what are you saying there?
Well, it's a lovely job, isn't it, to have to do that? It's one of those things where you actually think, look, this is going to be fine. What could possibly go wrong?
What, breeding seahorses?
No, I mean, we've all, I'm sure you've started off a siphon hose, haven't you? With the
not from a fish tank.
Never from a fish tank. I agree. I've never done that before. But it's one of those things that sometimes you have to do that, and it makes sense. So I understand the kind of logic. The thing is, I was sitting there thinking, is it actually not a good idea for the seahorses? Because if they can't be in even dirty water, surely being in your mouth not that clean either. For the seahorses,
I think Lady Called Dave probably had impeccable teeth and a beautiful mouth.
You've got a whole cave of micro-isms that might have affected the seahorses. However, it seems that you have their best interests in heart, and this time you are forgiven.
She loved the little seahorses, and she was just trying to do her best, Brother Matthew, don't you think?
How much would you have to love the little seahorses, and indeed your job, to be prepared to siphon it off with sucking up the water with the seahorse and the seahorse things in them, and on the off chance, I mean, there is a chance that one of them's going to get up that tube, and then you've got seahorse in your mouth.
You've got 4 of them.
I'd tell you, I'm not being paid anywhere near enough to have seahorses flying around, swimming around, not flying, in your mouth. So I am going to say forgiven, because she clearly loved seahorses and her job that much to be able to jeopardise her mouth.
Do you think seahorses could fly once and then they...
Yes. Yeah.
Well, here it is. It comes from DC. Thank you, DC. Dear Father Simon and the handsome, beautiful collective. This is kind of like an end of term. We're not quite at the end of term because there's lots and lots of exams and then end of term activities to come. But this is the kind of thing that happens in schools at the end of term, I think. Father Simon, I would like to seek forgiveness for a selfish and childish act committed when I was far too young to know any better. I'm not expecting forgiveness, but feel 20 years on, the time has come to request absolution. The year was 1996, and fast approaching the summer holidays of my first year at secondary school. As a 12-year-old, I was pleased that I'd made it to the end of the year without any major incidents or embarrassments. As the whole school was winding down for summer, the teachers were generally taking a more relaxed view on lessons. And many abandoned lesson plans altogether in favour of watching films in the classroom.
Those were the days. Oh, yes.
You send your children to school in the expectation they might be learning something, but no, they've been watching a video of...
Dallas.
Dallas, almost certainly. You have a good day at school? Yes, we watched Mamma Mia. Well, our German teacher, who wasn't actually from Germany, but from Croydon, asked the class which film they might like to watch the following lesson. And if they could provide the VHS of it, for younger listeners that's a videotape, he would be happy to play it. The standard U and PG rated films were suggested, involving mermaids, talking lions and Jamaican bobsleigh teams, but one suggestion from the more rebellious children at the back was the movie adaptation of the Stephen King book It.
What?
Exactly. The teacher seemed open to the idea and was, was looking for a consensus from the class, which was an almost unanimous yes.
Oh.
Almost, apart from me, says DC. Now, if you haven't seen this particular film, this is based around Stephen King's book. It's about 7 kids who are terrorised by a malevolent shapeshifter who primarily, this is the it of the title, makes himself known as a clown. Pennywise, the dancing clown. And he lives in sewers.
Okay.
And is a terrifying movie.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Curry is absolutely brilliant in it. Anyway, that's what it's about. The class are up for it. DC is not up for it. The German teacher, he's up for it too, or she possibly. You see, Father Simon, being only 12, I was not the biggest fan of clowns, especially menacing ones who hide in drains. That's always the clue as to whether they're a good clown.
Yeah.
Are they in circuses and smiling and giving out things? No. Is he living in a drain? Yes, he is. He's the wrong kind of clown. I absolutely did not want to watch the film for fear of embarrassing myself while it was being screened. However, I didn't feel I could expose any weaknesses or chinks in my armour to the people I would be sharing classrooms with well into my teens for fear of long-term torment and being branded a coward or a chicken, so I had to act fast. I had to stay cool. I might have been only 12, but I had my image to protect. Tears, hair gel don't go well at the same time. I turned to my best friend. Wearing hair gel at 12? Wow. I turned to my best friend who sat next to me. Let's call him Jim. And I said, "Do you know what this film It is about then?" "No," he replied. He was a trembly kind of guy. Yeah. I remembered that Jim wasn't a fan of horror films, which at the age of 12 is not really a surprise. I went on to describe what little I knew of the plot, embellishing hugely some of what I assumed would be the nastier moments. I was careful to go into quite a lot of detail about how horrible the film was, making things up as I saw fit. I went through every horror film-based ghastliness my 12-year-old mind could think of. Clowns with devils, clowns with axes, clowns with vampires, clowns with chainsaws and blood and guts and that kind of thing. Enough detail for Jim's expression to turn to one of horror and eventually, I'm sorry to say, tears. Needless to say, the teacher took notice of the blubbering and decided there and then that the class would not be allowed to watch It, and instead we would watch Bambi. Well, says DC, I have to say, much to my personal relief. So I would like to ask forgiveness, not from the class for ruining their fun, as the movie's runtime is actually 3 hours, because it was made for television, so that's why it is particularly so long. So we would never have reached the end anyway, and not from the teacher, who was willing to allow a group of 12-year-olds to watch a film rated at least 15. If anything, I saved his career. I mean, what was he thinking? Crazy guy. I would, however, like to ask forgiveness from Jim, my best friend, for using him as a pawn in my own cowardly attempt to save face. Jim got labelled a crybaby and a scaredy cat. So it wasn't remotely fair, because that was me. I've since read the book and watched the film, and it's actually okay. Well, that's some kind of reassurance there from DC. Well, if anyone has seen this or read the book, it is genuinely terrifying. That's why Stephen King is such a genius, and Tim Curry's performance is very, very disturbing. And if you're 12, then you don't want to be watching this. In fact, if you're 45, you don't want to be watching this. Sister Bobby from the Priory.
I have never watched it because even the picture is enough. No, too scary. And if you live in the woods, definitely too scary. The thing is, DC, is...
Do you live in the woods?
Don't. Oh, that's already too scary. If the thing is, DC, is had you just stood up and said, "Look, I don't want to watch this. I don't think it's fair," then it wouldn't have mattered that you stopped the whole class, because I didn't think it was fair anyway. It's a pretty poor choice of film.
You don't do that at 12,
for everybody. Well, you could do. I mean, you expect The Incredible Journey at school. You don't expect It. So I think Bambi was a great choice, and I'm sure everyone else would prefer to see Bambi, really, because I think a bunch of 12-year-olds, I don't think all of them really wanted to see It. I think about 2 of the boys did, because they've,
The rebellious ones at the back.
Yeah. So actually, the only thing is, you shouldn't have used Jim. That's what you're not forgiven for. So I'm kind of halfway here. You're not forgiven for using Jim.
Do you live in the dark woods?
Yes.
The
Scary.
dark woods. Brother Matthew.
Yeah, that's not disturbing.
What? That's my real voice.
Yes, clearly. Here's the point. The real villains of the piece here are two. One is this bunch of kids at the back of the class who are clearly far too cool for school, who are saying, "Oh, let's watch it. Oh, look at me, I'm crazy." And this teacher who's number one, never heard of it. Okay, slightly worried there. I mean, the title itself probably tells you this is not for children. As soon as you see the front cover of the clown peering out of the darkness, you should know, right, this is definitely not a movie for children. So what it's the teacher's fault, clearly. But basically, DC should never have been put in the position of getting his mate to blub in front of the class.
Would you like a balloon?
No. No, thanks.
It's a bright red balloon.
Less scary now. It's turned into something else.
Yes. Balloon with helium.
Yes.
So I'm going to forgive, because it's not his fault.
No, okay. So here's tonight's confession. We'll give it a PG? It's been through a few committees.
Really?
Yes. It comes from Biscuit Bill. Thank you, Biscuit Bill. Father Simon, I seek forgiveness from you and the Ready To clergy. Forgiveness for a blasphemous sin. A sin I know not if any amount of repentance will be enough to earn a pardon. The year is The year is 2005, and I am at the naive age of 15. Full of energy, full of the boldness of youth, and full of Cornish ice cream. The latter of the three is because it's the summer holidays, and each year, almost without fail, my mother and father would take my younger brother and I for a proper British holiday in the West Country. I have many fond memories of Cornwall, the marauding, pasty-stealing seagulls, the crab fishing, and wearing shorts every single day. Shorts, no matter how awful the weather. Even though you're only 80 miles away from your own house, shorts were essential to identify yourself as a holidaymaker when in Cornwall. Hashtag mandatory shorts.
Just so it's clear, he's wearing shorts.
Hashtag mandatory shorts.
Yes.
Today my parents had decided that we should take an invigorating cliff walk around the coast for some fresh sea air. Inspiring views and stories about the history of the smugglers' caves below us, as dictated by our father. This was, however, our third cliff walk this holiday, so you must understand that it was only natural that my brother and I would want to add more excitement. You see, to 15 and 13-year-old teenagers, cliffs were not meant to be walked on. They were meant to be climbed up. I should probably quickly pause here for those of you who might be expecting the worst. This is not a confession about how my brother plummeted off a Cornish cliff. No, I would not be writing to you about something like that. I can assure you that my brother is alive and well with intact bones and all his usual functions. The sin in this confession comes from another source. We left our parents to walk and instead both scrambled up the rock, the rough cliff, scraping our hands and knees. Very Enid Blyton. Blast it! I cursed. Why hadn't I worn a rugged pair of jeans that would have protected my knees? Oh yes, hashtag mandatory shorts, that's why. This is from the days when no one had heard of hashtag, or it was used for other things. Anyway, driven by the competitiveness that only brothers possess, we reached the top. A small grassy plateau, large enough for both of us, was waiting. The panoramic views were spectacular, and the sea breeze gusted as we turned to grin at each other in achievement. And it was then that we noticed that we were not alone on our grassy tuft. Beside us was a crude stone table, fashioned from rocks piled up, with a large flat slab placed on top. We both stared at the stack of mysterious stones. Cornwall has a bunch of these kind of things, but you wouldn't expect to find one on a grassy tuft so high. "What is it?" asked my brother, and I shrugged as we inched closer to inspect it. It looked ancient and important, not a natural formation. A forgotten marker, a sacrificial altar. As we looked closer, we noticed that it was hollow inside. The top slab was actually a lid. It was not a table, but a treasure stash, and our eyes widened. Smuggler's treasure? I was Indiana Jones, man in a hat. It all made perfect sense. As my younger brother and I lifted the lid open, Cornwall was known for smugglers. Everyone knew of smugglers hiding their loot in caves like those below us, and so it begged to reason that the smarter smugglers would break with convention and hide their loot somewhere else, where it was less likely to be discovered, like here. The stone lid fell aside, and we both peered into the darkness, expecting the glow of gold or smuggled jewels to greet us. At first, it was a little disappointing. that the stash was nearly empty. Empty, apart from a brick-sized parcel wrapped tightly in a black bin liner. My brother grabbed the wrapped brick and tested the weight. I know, I've got you here. Well, it isn't gold, he grimaced at the light brick while I thought things through. I was Inspector Poirot now. Man in a moustache. It was modern. Modern-day smugglers don't smuggle gold and stash it. They stash... No, cash. That's what they stash. Wads of banknotes which need to be kept dry inside bin liners. That's what it's going to be. I grinned again and grabbed the brick for my brother. I unsheathed my new souvenir shop 1-inch penknife and cut one side of the brick wide open. I was Scarface, a man with a scar. Out spilled a mass of white powder. Naturally, we were taken aback, a little shocked at how modern-day smugglers had lost a lot of their glamour and romance and morals. A different era from those stories of daring rogues sailing the high seas and transporting gold, liquor and spice, like those our father told us. A little white powder blew away with a gust of wind. Is that what I think it is? Asked my brother, suddenly from London. I nodded, but I really wasn't sure. We would have to report this. It was evidence. But we weren't quite 100%. We pondered and mulled things over for a few minutes. Eventually, an idea hit me. How did they always check these things in movies? Oh, no. Ah, yes, I remember. I dug my knife tip into the compressed powder block and lifted a pinch of powder on the blade. No, don't do that, frowned my younger brother as I brought it closer to my face. OK, little brother, I shall take your advice. Said no older brother ever, and I touched the knife tip against my tongue. To be honest, I didn't know what to expect in any case, and I spat it out. Tastes like shortbread, I said, and blinked in confusion. I tried again. It seemed very benign, not like what I'd imagined. I dipped a fingertip in and tried to examine the powder closer as my brother frowned and unwrapped more of the bin liner block. The police would probably run proper tests. Maybe it would lead to an arrest. I'd be in the paper. Thwarting organised crime. There'd be a reward. Brilliant. I wish I knew for certain, though. I gave my finger a lick. Still shortbread. There's a note, exclaimed my brother. Excellent, I thought. More incriminating evidence. What does it say? This is what it said. Here lies Pepper.
Oh, no! Oh, no!
Beloved cat and treasured companion. Rest in peace. The Three Oaks Pets Cremation Services. There you go. You might have been ahead of me on that one, but that's what it said. I must beg forgiveness, says Biscuit Bill, first from Pepper's owner for dismantling their cat's pagan tomb on the cliffs and eating the remains of their pet. Well, just a little bit. For your information, it is traditional to scatter ashes rather than leave them wrapped in a dodgy-looking bin liner. Following this tradition could have saved me some trauma. Thanks, please take note. Secondly, from my little brother, whose advice I should probably listen to more often. Third, from my mother and father, for making them sound like inattentive, happy-go-lucky parents in this confession for letting us climb in the first place when really nothing could be further from the truth. And fourthly, from Pepper, the desecrated cat, and deceased indeed, who did get wrapped up and entombed once more. Please don't haunt me. And fifthly, from the Scots, whose fine shortbread I no longer buy anymore. Thank you, Biscuit Bill. Well, as soon as you get a pagan arrangement of stones, who knows where the confession's going to go. But it ended up with the Three Oaks Pet Cremation Services. That's where it ended. What do you say, Bobby Pryor?
Well, it's so Enid Blyton, isn't it? It's so Island of Adventure. It's so absolutely perfect. And really, no harm done. It's interesting that Pepper tastes like shortbread twice. Not just once, but twice, to make sure. And it's interesting that actually those bricks, when you've... Anyway.
Don't try that at home. Don't climb cliffs and eat the remains of a cat.
And I'm sure if you licked your live cat now, it doesn't taste like a shortbread either. So it was
no one licks their cats, Bobby. What are you talking about?
Well, anyway, moving on. No harm done, it seems.
No harm
done. I'd say you're forgiven. What a lovely, lovely holiday.
Yeah.
Great story.
It's a lovely.
I thought that Mum and Dad had been up there first and left them some shortbread. That's what I thought had happened, you see. There you go.
Okay. My mind was racing to something completely different.
Where was your mind going?
I don't know, but let's not discuss that now.
Okay, so what do you say, Matt?
Well, what I say is, obviously this person thought that they were Indiana Jones, or Indiana Jones as the rest of us call him. I would say, what are you doing putting your ashes in a bin liner and not having the note there directly on the brick? Why are you leaving the note somewhere? In fact, why are you, as Bill
The note
points
was
out,
further in the hole.
Yeah. Well, exactly. What are you doing separating it from the main brick? You should be putting it on the brick, and in fact, you should be scattering the ashes. You don't put the whole point of doing that process is so that you can scatter.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am going to forgive. Because of the lack of labelling, which, as we all know, is very wrong.
So it was the cat cremation service.
It was the cat cremation service have been getting away with this for too long.
Something
Not
must be
anymore.
done. Thank you for gathering around the radio. Another drive-time confession. I think this is it's got a U certificate, Matt. Sorry about that. But anyway,
well.
I can always add something in.
Yeah, just spice it up.
How are the spices going, by the way, Nigel, for after 6 o'clock? Hot and spicy chicken wings?
How's my lime?
Yeah, pardon?
How's my lime?
Oh, yeah, that's all you've got.
Char grilled.
Char grilled lime? Lime is the most fabulous fruit, though, isn't it?
Yeah, particularly the margarita.
Very good.
This is what we're doing.
Push it in the top of a beer. That's very nice as well. So flexible.
Yeah, keeps the flies out the beer.
So what have we got here? This is tonight's tale comes from Dave. Father Simon, there's something I need to get off my chest. Even though this little incident happened in the late 1960s. Wow. So it's been hanging around for a while, but sometimes it takes a while for it all to bubble up to the top. My nan and granddad, who loved the royal family and had a picture of the Queen by the front door. I think we've all got pictures of the royal family by the front door. I know Matt has. Got to hear that the Queen would be travelling through Northampton, passing through the small village of Church Brampton, and as we only lived a mile away, they thought it would be a really good idea to go as a family and see the Queen and maybe wave a few Union Jacks to cheer her on her way. We even wrote, "God bless you, Mum," right across the Union flag. Now, our family consisted of Mum and Dad, Nana and Grandad, my older sister and me, being about 10 years old. So on this particular sunny Saturday, the planned outing was hatched. My mum even suggested that we took a picnic. Make a day of it. While Mum made the picnic, I felt very excited while I helped Dad load the Mark I Sunbeam Rapier with camping chairs and blankets. Nana and Grandad duly arrived and gave us a toot as they pulled up outside our house in their bright yellow Ford Classic Capri, which is always a bit racy for Grandad, I thought. But anyway, so we're just dating it with our particular car models there. Are you ready? Oh, he's Grandad. Are you ready? He shouts. As we need to leave early to get a good position. Come on. OK, we'll follow you. And such chat went on. On arriving, it was quite obvious that no other royal fans had actually turned up yet. So we were there first and we staked our place. In this village is a small triangular green, which is where we set up camp. So with blankets on the ground and the orange squash flowing, we waited with anticipation, feeling quite smug with ourselves that we had a prime position. Mum, I said after a while, where's everyone else? I thought there'd be loads of people here. I don't know, she replied. When's she coming through, Nan? I asked. Loudly, because she was a bit deaf. About 3 o'clock, says Nan, although it's gone 3. I'm not sure where she is. I'm not sure why there are no people outside their houses. It was about then that there was actually some activity a little bit further up the hill, and my sister and myself jumped up at the sight of a procession of cars travelling very regally right down the hill. OK, here we go. It might be a small welcoming party, but we would more than make up for it in noise, agility, gaiety and enthusiasm. Here she comes, Nan shouted as we stood at the edge of the road frantically waving our flags. Grandpa sang loudly, God save the Queen, and shouted, give us a wave then. And as they got closer, I remember trying to peer around my Nan's head and get a glimpse of Her Majesty, but I couldn't see anyone in a diamond-studded crown, only some men with tall hats. And it was that I heard my Nan say, oh dear, Jack. That was the name of my granddad. Oh dear. It was only when I saw the coffin in the rear of the car that the waving and the singing and the shouting and the brouhaha ground to a halt. Sure enough, the cars pulled up slowly outside the village church, 100 yards away. I turned round. The look on the adults' faces was a picture. You could have heard a pin drop. We slunk away. It wasn't until the following day we found out that Her Majesty did travel through Northampton, but along the main road, the A428, Bobby, just outside the village, causing a few delays. Mind you, this travel news is about 50 years old. She'd be visiting Althorpe House. Anyway, Father Simon, we obviously need forgiveness on behalf of my family to the people in the funeral cortege who must have wondered what on earth was going on, with lots of jolly bunting and shouting and singing of royal songs. So if you're still around, it was us. I regularly pass that triangular green and I still have a small guilty chuckle to myself, says Dave. Now, I think we might get quite a few of these kind of stories. Either funeral cortege stories or turning up for the Queen. That kind of thing. We'll take your confessions via the website or confessions@bbc.co.uk. Bobby, what are you saying here then to Dave?
Oh, Dave, it's such a lovely, lovely story. I love the idea of all the parents getting together with the kids. The thing is, though, if I had been in that funeral procession, or it had been me in the back of the hearse, if someone had been kind of waiting and cheering, that might have been quite nice. So it depends on the party to how they would have reacted to that. It could have been a lovely kind of send-off had Grandma been in there or some. Depends, you see. It really depends on that person. And the thing is I'm sure they weren't really offended, actually, looking back. I mean, it might have been inappropriate for the time. So, Dave, I can easily forgive you, but what I'm really forgiving you for is your grandparents had a Consul Capri, and that's my favourite car ever.
Is that
so
right?
So you are forgiven.
Totally
completely
forgiven. All right, let's see how the novice turns up here.
Yeah, Formula 4 Jack, he sounds like a racy grandpa, doesn't it?
He does.
Of course, the minute you said, give us a wave then, you imagine, like I did, the Addams Family and Thing, the hands. Can you imagine if Thing suddenly appeared? That would have been really impressive.
What, from out of the coffin?
Yeah, or even just, casually sunbathing on top of it. But, yeah, Chesty Dave, you got it off your chest. Well done. It's taken you 50-odd years. And really, it was not your fault at all. And you missed the Queen, so yeah, definitely forgiven on this occasion.
It's looking quite good, but let's see what Brother Matthew makes of
it's
this.
an easy mistake to make with the sort of the black cars, and it all looks very posh, and from a distance, could look like the royal family.
Do you think?
Yeah, I'd give us a wave. Sounds a bit. That's okay, isn't it? No.
It's not really what you shout at a funeral cortege.
Not really. But, I'm sure everyone took it in fine form. No harm, no foul.
As they say in Northamptonshire.
As they say in Northamptonshire. So I'm going to forgive, because we all die at some point, and better to die with someone saying "give us a wave" as you go on your final shuffling off the mortal coil.
Okay. Well, they were this week's confessions, and darn good I thought they were. If it's provoked something shadowy in your soul, now's the time to tell me. Confessions@bbc.co.uk. There won't be any next week, because I'm off, but back in a fortnight. But if you're missing me, you can listen to all the shows from the last 30 days on the iPlayer. On Monday, Maggie O'Farrell was in the book. I won't mind it if you're not, by the way. I'm just telling you this in case you're interested. Maggie O'Farrell was doing a book club thing. This Must Be the Place is her latest novel. National treasure Sir Ken Branagh graced the studio on Tuesday and was waxing lyrical about Wallander and Valander, and also a bit of Shakespeare in there. Wednesday was Alex James, he of Blur and Cheese fame, talking about his big festival. And on Thursday, Nige served up hot and sweet lime chicken wings. The details on the Ready To website. Just head for the Thursday episode page, toggle down until you hit the recipe. It's so straightforward. I mean, really, you're such a simpleton if you can't make it. Anyway, if you get this far into the podcast, could you tweet me Googie Withers? It'll give me a lot of comfort. Thank you.